Oh, hello. I've just I've just received word that Mole is in someone's hands. My best friend Kevin in England just let me know that Mole has been delivered to him. He sent me a picture of it, so I know it is true. Mole exists. It's not in these hands yet. We don't know where it is, but it's on its way. So if you are one of those amazing human beings who pre-ordered a copy, it seems as though at least one has been received so far. So thank you, and you can expect yours before long here. Who knows? There's just no telling. But I thought this would be a good opportunity to bring up something, because, you know, when you write a book, this is always the case. After it goes to press, you always find something else that you wish you could have worked into it. You know, stuff that that just, because of time and the way it works, you didn't get it till it was too late. That's just how it goes. And working on a book, when you're done with it, it keeps coming back to you. It keeps finding you. And it's like, oh no, what about me? I want to be in the book, but it's too late. One case of this arrived in the form of this book here. This is the 14th volume of the collected works of psychologist Carl Jung. And this book is called Mysterium Conjunctionis. And it is a book dealing a lot with alchemy and the symbolism of alchemy and what that means psychologically, because Jung was very interested in, very interested in alchemy, and this is his last major work on it. He did a lot of work on alchemy, which is, of course, you know, the sort of common understanding is that it is an ancient practice of turning base materials into gold, you know, lead into gold. People who really seriously study alchemy will say that's not what it's about. In this, what he was doing in these books was really looking at the symbols psychologically and sifting through them and interpreting them. He was finding a lot of parallels between the imagery that alchemists produced and his understanding of psychology in terms of how we become ourselves over the course of our life. So, in this book here, there's a little nugget here on page 156, and it's in paragraph 183 for the Jungians out there. I'll just read this. I came across this. Olympiodorus speaks of the one cursed by God who dwells in the black earth. This is the mole, which, as Olympiodorus relates from a Hermetic book, had once been a man who divulged the mysteries of the sun and was therefore cursed by God and made blind. He knew the shape of the sun as it was. So that's an interesting point right there. Now, Olympiodorus was a Neoplatonist philosopher and teacher, professor in Alexandria, and some people apparently have said that this work is not really Olympiodorus. There's scholarly debate on that, the text that was taken from being actually the Olympiodorus. They think maybe, you know, it's just been ascribed to him and he didn't write it at all. That aside, it exists. Somebody wrote this idea about the mole being cursed by God. And someone who used to be a man, who divulged the mysteries of the sun. Because, you know, if you know the mysteries of the sun, you're not supposed to just go divulging those. You'll get punished. You'll get turned into a mole. I have a couple of thoughts. One, this relates to folklore about moles that we pick up in other parts of the world. And these examples I'm going to give to you are right out of the book. So one of them comes from a story told by a fellow named F.J. We only know him by his initials, who is a Nahuatl speaker, and the Nahuatl people are indigenous to Mexico and El Salvador. So as this story goes, the mole paid Christ a special visit when his body had been shut away in the tomb. And then this is directly from FJ's story. The mole decided to go into the grave to see if he were alive or dead. God, our Father, was alive. The mole felt that he was alive. God, our Father, said to the mole, "Now that you've come, now you'll stay here forever." So, the mole stayed there and didn't return to tell the Jews. So, this is an interesting, there are a couple of interesting things going on here. One, the mole going in to the tomb and meeting God and then being told you're always going to stay here. Is it a curse? Is it a blessing? Is it both? In this case, the mole is a mole, and it comes in, and apparently this is just, in some ways, an explanation of why moles stay underground. It's because of this event in their life, and in other ways, what you see happening is perhaps it is a curse as well. Maybe it's like, since you peeped in here on me, like you're gonna stay underground forever. It's a bit ambiguous. I read it more as a blessing. And another thing going on with it is we see a story by a person who was in a culture that had been colonized, and they are taking the colonial religion and doing something with it, doing something of their own, injecting some bit of local nature into the story. This happened a lot. There are also stories of other animals in other cultures in Christianity coming and meeting with Christ. The first time I went up Bray Head in Ireland, I met a fellow named Patrick from Tala who was going up there as well, and he told me the story of how hedgehogs bore fruit to the Lord while on their spikes while he was on the cross, and they were blessed for that. Hedgehogs were blessed for bringing like apples and grapes to the Lord while he was on the cross, which I always I still find really odd, because like he can't like pluck them off the fruit off and enjoy it. Very odd. But there you have it. Some localized culture making it into a colonial religion and a colonizing religion. So there's one mole who is sort of like, you're sent underground, whatever, you're going to stay here. Another story comes up by a German writer named Richard Demmel, who wrote fairy tales in the late 1800s. And he wrote one called The Fairy Tale of the Mole. That's not the German title, of course. And he was influential on Kafka, actually. But in this, in his fairy tale of the Mole, there's a dwarf king who, bored with his 7 rooms encrusted in precious gems, yearned for a light that would combine them all into one. All the dwarves thought he'd gone mad, but he set about digging upward to the earth's surface with his fingers. After 3,000 years, his fingers gone raw, he considered turning back. Convinced his people would lock him away in a madhouse, he instead dug for another 3,000 years. Finally, breaking through, he was astonished to find there were so many colors up there as if 1,000 colorful knives were stinging his heart. Staring into the sun's radiance, he was blinded. Falling back down the hole he dug, his nose sharpened and fright fused his black velvet cape to his body. According to this story, quote, "That's why moles have a black velvet coat and pink dwarf hands and are blind." So, we've got a story there from the end of the 1800s about moles. You know, a man becoming a mole, just like this Olympiodorus story. Man becoming a mole after seeing the sun. Curious. There's another thing that I'm thinking of too. Another example, the film El Topo, which I also write about in the book. If you are familiar with El Topo, you know where I'm going. If not, go watch El Topo. It's messed up and it's wonderful, and you'll at the end of it you'll be like, what did I just watch? El Topo is Spanish for the mole. The film was made by Alejandro Jodorowsky, and he stars in it, and he is El Topo. He's a gunfighter in the Wild West and Mexico. He goes on a quest to shoot the best gunfighters in the land in order to win the heart of a woman. And along the way, he kind of falls into a bit of trouble, and he ends up being taken care of by a lot of people underground, and he wakes up, and he has sort of become a mole in a way. It's different though. Before this, he is wearing all black. When he wakes up in the cave, he's completely bleached white. He has this white bleached afro and lipstick on, and he has become El Topo. He also suffers the price of trying to dig up to the light, shall we say. I won't ruin anything, but again, we have that theme, that motif of moles, where they try to get to the sun to see it, they see it, and then it all goes to pot. They are forever cursed for this, or changed in some dire way. So anyway, I just wanted to give you a little update. Mole is on the way. There's more weird information about moles and motifs like this coming. This little nugget from Jung was just too good to not share. It couldn't make it into the book, but in this era of social media, it could end up right here. Yeah. If you haven't ordered the book yet, go ahead. You can find it anywhere online where you order books. And I promise there's a lot more silliness and strangeness and even some mirth in its pages. I hope you enjoy it. I will be back with more Mole when I've got a copy in my hands.